Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and today we're going to recap joint practices with the Las Vegas Raiders out there in Las Vegas. A very hot day out at practice. A lot of sweat, a lot of tears, a lot of injuries on the football field, unfortunately, for the San Francisco 49ers. Going to get into all of that, including Brock Purdy's insane performance against the Raiders defense and Christian McCaffrey hitting 25 miles per hour on the radar gun, says Kyle Shanahan. We'll get into all that and more on today's show, but don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and leave us that 5-star audio podcast review. And let's dive into a hard-hitting day of San Francisco 49ers joint practices. And let's start things off with, unfortunately, what has been a common theme amongst the Niners practices this season, and that is the injury bug continues to bite San Francisco. Had a ton of guys on the sideline today, including Jordan Watkins, Jordan Elliott, Kevin Givens, Fabian Moreau, Jordan James, Richie Grant, Samuel Kawanu, Isaac Guerrero, Jason Pinnock, Trey Brown, Yetur Gross-Matos, Jauan Jennings, Micah Williams, Upton Stout, Renardo Green, Ben Barch, and Nick Bosa. A lot of guys not practicing for San Francisco. Just, I don't know why. I don't know what causes it. I don't think it's stretching. I don't think it's anything else other than that. It just feels like it's bad luck. It just feels like guys are, for whatever reason, like San Francisco doesn't have these insane, long 2-hour practices. Like sometimes once, maybe twice a week, if you're lucky, they'll go an hour and a half. Today, a little longer. Obviously, you have two teams out there, but the Niners being this banged up this early into the season, albeit nothing too serious thus far, it is a concern because those things linger. You don't get healthier as the year progresses usually. So I'm not exactly sure why. And despite the injuries they had, there was some good news today because we did get to see Yetur Gross-Matos and Micah Williams and Upton Stout and Renardo Green and even Nick Bosa doing workouts on the sidelines. And so there was some good news, some guys that we haven't seen in a while getting some work done on the side fields. Nick Bosa sat out practice today with neck soreness. Not exactly sure how that happened, when that happened, but the question becomes, should we be concerned about Nick Bosa? Because he's missed a handful of practices in very short spurts with what has been, again, labeled as neck soreness. He missed earlier this week one time and now missing again after an off day. I'm not sure San Francisco is kind of saving him for the preseason game on Saturday, which Kyle Shanahan did say some starters will play. We don't know exactly who that will be, but the neck is not a place you want to mess around with. And again, you're hoping it's just soreness, but Nick Bosa is a big dude, strong dude. He doesn't miss practice usually unless it's for rest. So to see him not out there today being labeled with soreness, I won't put it under the massive concern category, but just watch out for that. Maybe it's nothing, maybe it's something, but maybe a reason to be concerned with Nick Bosa, who has been and missed a couple of practices this week with some soreness. We also got some clarification on why Jason Pinnock and Trey Brown, both defensive backs, have not been practicing. Now today, Trey Brown did individual drills, but did not do team drills. They both have heel injuries. I don't know if that means it's related to the calf or the Achilles, but neither one of those seem to be very major right now. So I guess that's kind of good to know. Again, San Francisco continues to avoid the major torn ACL or torn MCL injury, which is good. But when you have 20 plus guys on the shelf, it's a big, big problem. We also got confirmation from Jauan Jennings, for those of you out there that don't believe the injury is real. Earlier this morning on Instagram, on his IG story, he posted himself getting treatment in Las Vegas with the team doctors and team training staff. So yes, Jauan Jennings' injury is real. Yes, the calf injury is a concern. Yes, he hasn't practiced in about a week and a half. I think he hasn't practiced since the first week of training camp. So I again, just confirmation. Jauan Jennings is hurt. But again, good thing is right now, there is no out for 2 months, out for, the year, any injuries so far. So there is some good stuff there. I do want to get to the YouTube chat and say what's up to Strawberry Reacts. They say Sterling, and Big Brick 84 says Buenos Dias. Right back at both of you. Hope you're all having a great Thursday afternoon. And Bobo, my friend, where have you been? Been so long since we've seen you in the YouTube comments. Thank you for being back and tuning back into the show. But they say sometimes you hurt yourself trying too hard to impress. Sometimes you have guys trying to vie for a roster spot. But they also say as long as Brock Purdy doesn't get hurt. You were in jail? What do you mean you were in jail, Bobo? What have you been doing in your free time? What are you, Rashee Rice? What are you, Demarcus Robinson? What do you mean you were in jail? Give me details. Come on. You were in jail for what? What the heck? We have a felon in our YouTube chat, and his name is Bobo. But let's get back into the notes I have, because there was some noteworthy things that transpired during practice, mainly, again, sticking with the injury conversation, CJ West, who, just like Micah Williams, avoided a major knee injury. Michael hyperextended his knee, and today CJ West did the exact same thing. I guess his knee buckled during 1v1 reps against the Las Vegas Raiders offensive line. He kind of took an assessment of like, what was that? My leg hurts. What's going on? He walked off under his own power after being talked to and seen by the team doctors. And the initial diagnosis shows no damage to the ACL. So one of those, we dodged a bullet there, but that's the second time a highly drafted defensive lineman in this draft class has gotten hurt. And the first one being Michael. He'll be out for the remainder of this week and probably a portion of next week too. Hopefully he's back for the preseason finale against the Chargers. But West narrowly avoids what could have been a catastrophic injury for San Francisco and himself. Again, the diagnosis was no ACL damage, but like that stuff is like a freak injury. Like you're just trying to get to the quarterback. You're trying hard, trying to win reps. But CJ West will probably be a bigger impact player than most guys in this draft class, and probably one of the most impactful defensive players they have. So thank God he did not get hurt, but it just continues to add to the conversation as to how many people are on the shelf. And Bobo in here, apparently it's a crime to look this good. All right, dude, you can't say I was in jail and then be like, oh, actually, God, you freaking rickrolled me on the show, which I appreciate a good rickroll, but what are we doing? You led me on. I feel like I was misled by you. That's some fake news, brother, but happy you're in here and having a good Thursday afternoon with us here on 49ers Access, reacting to Niners and Raiders joint practices. The West injury, or I guess non-injury, does highlight a big concern, though, where individually the injuries haven't been major. There's no one, again, missing months and months and months of time just yet, at least that of what we know. But the Niners defensive line today was like dry bones. It was a freaking ragtag group of misfits out there. Guys that you either haven't heard of or had never seen before. They had 2 guys signed this morning that were on the field today. And CJ West has become their 7th defensive lineman that's been hurt this year. And that includes players like Jordan Elliott, Kevin Givens, Sam Okawanu. You have Yetur Gross-Matos, Micah Williams, Nick Bosa. And it's like, at what point does I'm really shocked San Francisco even had the opportunity to do a joint practice today. So whatever we see on Saturday is going to be just a hodgepodge of crap on the defensive line. Maybe outside of Alfred Collins, obviously CJ West probably not going to play in the next 2 preseason games with the injury he has, unless he can recover miraculously. But San Francisco really doesn't have anybody worth mentioning, maybe outside of Clea Davis and guys like that. But We aren't, and this is kind of the good and bad thing about this is that these young guys need reps, right? They need to be out there in live game situations, but we also are not going to see this Niners defense at full strength now the entirety of the preseason, right? It was kind of already going to be like that with without Micah Williams and maybe no Nick Bosa, depending on how they played starters. But now it's no CJ West. Now it's no Nick Bosa probably on Saturday, maybe week 3, we shall see, but no Kevin Gibbons. And it's no CJ West now. We are not going to get a full glimpse of the defensive line coming into the season at full strength at all, which maybe is a good thing for San Francisco, and they can hide some things, and opposing teams aren't going to know how to game plan for them. But on the other side, like, these guys are all unproven besides Nick Bosa and Bryce Huff. They need reps. They need to be out there. But it seems like as the fans and the media and as the NFL, we're not going to get to see San Francisco's defense at full strength, which they already have so many injuries. Mustafa's involved in that too, and Renardo Green's in there. And, right now on paper, at least, with these guys on the shelf or on the sideline, as Kenny 49ers says here, Seattle is licking their chops. I don't know if it's Seattle in specific, but if these guys don't get healthy and don't get ramped up and don't come back before week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, it's going to put a big damper on the beginning of San Francisco season. Now, again, they should get Yetur Gross-Matos, CJ West, Micah Williams, Samuel Kawano. Like, all these guys should be back by week 1 besides Kevin Gibbons. But with so much to prove and us not being able to assess what they're going to look like, it does make it tough for fans, media, people like myself that, want to have an idea as to where and how to rank, grade, view San Francisco. It really does feel like that the Niners, by no fault of their own, they have a lot of depth, but all that depth is now gone. So I would like to see that. But again, Kenny says here, Seattle is licking their chops. I think a lot of teams would be, if you saw people like we saw on the defensive line today, guys that, well, yes, Bryce Huff's out there and guys like that, but it does feel like that the Niners, it's a lot of questions where I'm not concerned now, but as we enter into week 3 of the preseason and we get closer to roster cutdown day, a lot of questions that have to be answered, and those won't get answered until during the season, but you'd like to be healthy to be able to answer those questions, not wondering, well, what if? And right now, we're all wondering, what if? Like, what does San Francisco's defense actually look like? Because we haven't seen it fully healthy the entirety of preseason or the training camp practices. Big Brick 84 says, Evan Anderson was back at practice on Tuesday. Does anyone know who was out there today? Yes, he was. There you go. Which Evan will probably start, I'm assuming, against Las Vegas this weekend, unless they want to play cautious with him. It'll probably be him and Kalia Davis. Maybe they go Davis and Collins now that Wes is out, but Evan Anderson should factor into a game against Las Vegas this Saturday. Moving along here in my notes, the same thing can almost be said about the Niners offensive line, because this morning they placed Andre Dillard on season-ending IR, and Dillard had practiced literally twice with the offense after missing all of OTAs, the beginning of training camp, just came back this week off an ankle injury. And the assumption was he'll be getting reps at backup left tackle and backup right tackle, and maybe a factor into the swing tackle training camp battle with Burford and Austin Pleasance. But nope, that's over with. And unfortunately, San Francisco is stuck with Pleasance and Burford as their backup tackles unless they find somebody else, whether it's trade or post roster cutdown day waiver claim. But like the defensive line, the offensive line is also kind of in shambles, and in a not so serious way, like not as bad as the defensive line is currently, because Trent's healthy, Brandel's healthy, Pooney's healthy, and so is McKivitz. But Ben Barch, who hurt his elbow, I guess, in the last practice a couple days ago, he was not practicing today, and there was no sling, there was no padded up on his elbow, but when he's already missing time for the second time in training camp, like that's a concern. And today there was a different rotation on the offensive line, which more so looked like how it did to begin training camp than how it has looked the last couple of weeks. But Trent Williams did individual drills, warmed up, and then didn't do team drills, which I don't love, but I understand it. It looks like that Trent, they're going to save him until the actual like week 1 of the season. I don't think we're going to see Trent at all during preseason, which makes sense. But because of that, Spencer Burford is getting all the left team or left tackle first team reps. Nick Sikel and Connor Colby both split time at left guard, and then other stuff. So a different offensive line today. I would say for today's practice as a whole, you really couldn't get a sense for both teams, right? The Raiders were much more healthier than San Francisco was, but then San Francisco isn't healthy at all and didn't have some of their guys practicing. So definitely tipped the scale against them, but their offense played really well against the Raiders defense, whereas the Raiders offense had a lot more success against San Francisco's defense. But I think like right now the starting offense is fine, or the starting offensive line is fine, right? Again, Trent, Brendel, Puni, McKivitz, those guys are like those 4 guys are in place. And if you aren't a big, if you aren't a big Ben Barch guy or you don't believe in him that much, you don't mind him being hurt, I guess. But it's just the depth there. And I'll tell you this. I know we talk about the starting 5, that it should be an improved unit, but their depth is a big concern. Whereas the defensive line depth, albeit they're all injured currently, when they're healthy, they're pretty deep. Whereas if the offensive line misses one guy, or if Trent's down, or McKivitz is down, or Puni goes down, mainly if Trent goes down, we are in for a world of hurt. Now, there's already a big discrepancy in Trent playing left tackle and guarding Purdy's backside compared to Burford, which Burford today, wow, just I'm shocked. I'm shocked how bad he is. He's a guard playing tackle. I don't know if he won a rep today. Just every time outmatched, outgunned, out strengthened, if that's the word you want to use. I think that the Niners, like, finding depth is always hard, right? You're not going to find, starting caliber depth pieces available via the trade market or whatnot. But the depth they currently have, to me, is still a big question mark, mainly Spencer Burford. You would have at least liked to have Andre Dillard, or maybe sign DJ Humphries when the deal was supposed to get done but didn't get done. There's big question marks there. Burford was terrible today. And the Raiders' defensive line is not really in great shape compared to other teams in your division. Whereas at Burford, who will probably have to play at some point this year, I don't trust him against Jared Verse and the Rams or other guys or other teams like that, or against Atlanta's defensive line, which has Matthew Judon and other things like that. But again, it's hard to find depth, but that doesn't mean that Burford's good. Like, I'm not saying trade him. I'm not saying that once the actual games come and you're playing next to Barch and the rest of the starting 5, if he has to play, that he won't see an improved level of play. We saw Burford last year play better late in the year than he has in previous seasons. So maybe there is hope there, but today just wasn't a good day. I'm hoping he bounces back. Maybe Saturday will give us a better sign, but even then, like, I'm a little nervous about Brock Purdy playing on Saturday, which he's supposed to against the Raiders, with Burford blocking his backside. So I'm hoping that it's a very easy and simple game plan. Let's not get our quarterback killed by Burford, because we don't know if the Raiders are going to play starters this week, so maybe that's a difference maker. But if it's anything like the Broncos game, and Nick Bonita's over there, night for Brock Purdy, but I'm hoping Burford can bounce back. But right now, at least not having a great camp, not having a great preseason. So I'm hoping he can bounce back and kind of end up rounding into form as the preseason continues and goes along. That said, when Shanahan told the media today that some starters would play, I'm going to assume that does not include Christian McCaffrey or Trent Williams or Nick Bosa. I think those three guys don't need to play. Purdy should play, or at least, if he's going to play, he should be in there with the starters. I think you'll see Brendel, Pooney, McKivitz. Like, you'll see most of, like, it would be reckless and just downright idiotic to not have your starting offensive line without Trent Williams out there to block for Brock Purdy. So I'm assuming that'll be the case. I don't know exactly who runs with the ones. I'm sure Pearsall will play. Jacob Cowling did practice today, did do team drills. He'll probably play this Saturday, make his preseason debut. I think that, but other than Trent and Nick Bosa and Christian McCaffrey, I think all the starters will probably play. Maybe you can convince me that Lenoir shouldn't, with Bernardo Green hurt, but and with Lenoir kind of battling a hip injury still, who he was not good today either. But maybe you can convince me of that. But I think you're going to see 90% of the starters play of the guys that aren't hurt. But let's see. And my assumption also is they're going to play one, maybe two drives at most. I was even shocked that they even were going to play him this week because of the joint practice. But I guess Kyle wants to see more, which isn't always a bad thing. But I would not expect too much of those guys against Las Vegas, which, knowing my luck, they'll play the entire first quarter. But before we continue on to my actual practice and team drill notes, I want to remind you guys to use the promo code right here, 49ers Access, 49 ERS ACCESS at SeatGeek.com to save yourself $20 off your first purchase, whether it is a Niner game, NFL game, MLB game, concert tickets. Use that promo code and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. Leon Sandcastle asks here in the YouTube chat, are there any Mustafa injury updates or a timeline? No, and no. Unfortunately, there hasn't been much outside of whatever Mustafa's mom says on Twitter, which she has been pretty adamant of him being back by week 1, but there's no indication that's going to happen. The inkling I'm getting is that he's probably going to return around week 5 or 6. I think shooting for that Buccaneers, Falcons, Texans stretch of games may make the most sense for him. Get him back at home in prime time. That, to me, makes a lot of sense. But they're like starting the year on the pup for 4 weeks, then returning, that to me seems ideal. Get him back sometime in October probably is the ideal return date for him. But there hasn't been much said from the organization themselves. Lori Matthews says, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Lori Matthews. Hope you're staying cool in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm sure it's very hot there. It is very hot here where I'm at currently. Very hot in Las Vegas today too. But let's get back into the show itself and the takeaways from training camp, because Brock Purdy today was on one. And on one in all the right ways. Like, sometimes when you say that, it's a negative connotation. But Brock Purdy was playing football like it was on rookie mode in Madden. He was slicing, dicing, decimating, dominating, whatever other word you want to use to categorize his performance today against the Raiders defense. Purdy was tremendous. Now, it is the Raiders, so, what does that mean? I think the Raiders are in for a improved season with Pete Carroll at the helm now. But they're running an old defense. Like, even George Kittle said, like, they've been running the same defense they were in Seattle a decade and a half ago. So maybe outdated. Maybe Kyle Shanahan just knows how to beat it. Maybe Brock is like, oh, this is easy because I've beaten it so many times already. But Brock was awesome today. Just throwing the ball left and right, up, down. and was hitting guys wide open in stride. He eviscerated the Raiders defense. He had 2 touchdowns today, had a wide open 20-yard touchdown pass to Kyle Juszczyk near the sideline, and also split the safeties for a deep touchdown to Ricky Pearsall over the middle. So a solid day for Brock Purdy walking into an off day tomorrow, leading into preseason week 2 against the Silver and Black on Saturday. But an awesome day for him. Looked in rhythm for missing guys like Ayuk and Jennings, and not having Jordan Watkins, and really having this like rotation of number 1 receivers this year. It's been Purdy has pretty much been the same, been consistent. So I know last year we saw a lot of, I won't say roller coaster play, but some inconsistencies in Purdy's games, some forcing some passes, in which that time may come once the actual football games are here and we're all kind of greased up, ready to go. But throughout training camp, with some pressure of a joint practice involved here or 2 times, he's looked really consistent. So that's with Russell Gage out there, Jordan Watkins, Pearsall, Jennings, Cowling, all those guys. But I think that Brock had one of his best days. Not like flashy. It wasn't like there was 17 touchdowns being thrown, but just a nice, solid outing. Rare incompletions, not involved much in the offense, and he was getting the football downfield consistently to Christian McCaffrey, to Russell Gage, to Pearsall, to Juszczyk. Like everybody was involved, including George Kittle too. A really, really, really good day. Really good day by the Niners quarterback. Moving along to the backfield, because Christian McCaffrey, and I think we're seeing what's going to come once the regular season is here. We've talked a lot about this, that Christian McCaffrey has been heavily involved in the passing game during training camp. And I think a lot of you out there have been clamoring, have Christian McCaffrey be a slot receiver, have Christian McCaffrey replace Deebo Samuel in that way, with the screens and the end arounds, and alleviate the pressure off of his legs and his calf and his Achilles. Christian McCaffrey is going to be a major part of this offensive passing attack. He has been open downfield, getting open downfield, making guys miss downfield. He has been a very integral part in the passing game throughout training camp. And so I think that for all of you out there asking for Christian McCaffrey to be utilized more through the air, or if you have an upcoming fantasy football draft with it being PPR, I would take Christian McCaffrey, because I think he will have 50 catches this year, 60 catches this year. Maybe that's a high number, but he has been utilized a heck of a lot more through the air than the ground in training camp, which may be a way to kind of preserve his legs and whatnot throughout training camp, but very, very, very much involved through the air. We have a question here by Strawberry. They asked, another 1,000 yard season coming? I don't think so. I don't think Christian will get 1,000 yards on the ground. But I do think we could see Christian reach 800 yards through the air and maybe about 700 on the ground, 800 on the ground. I think we will see Christian, while utilized heavily, I just don't think he'll reach 1,000 yards in both categories again, but I do think he'll be heavily involved to a point where you'll see him reach like 1,600 scrimmage yards altogether with like 10 touchdowns. So I think that we will be in good hands if he can stay healthy through the air, with him and Brock and Kittle playing well together throughout training camp. Lori Matthews asks here, who do you see getting most of the reps behind CMC rushing? Well, if they're healthy, I think Kyle will go with Guerendo and then Jordan James as the RB2 and 3. But if those guys aren't healthy, I think Kyle will be stubborn and he'll play Patrick Taylor Jr. But I also would not be shocked if, again, those guys aren't healthy, to see Corey Kiner be out there and play. Like, he looked good in preseason. He's looked really good in training camp. And so I think it does depend on who's healthy. But if everything's right, everybody's out there, it'll be CMC, Guerendo, James. And then maybe you can debate as to whether Kiner or Taylor Jr. make the roster. I think I'd pick Kiner and bring back Taylor Jr. on the practice squad if possible. But if guys are currently hurting, which they currently are, I think Taylor Jr. will probably get the brunt of the carries behind CMC, with Corey Kiner kind of pushing him for his, I get the fourth running back job, if you will. But good question there from Lori Matthews. Moving it along into the rest of the Christian McCaffrey conversation, because a lot has been made as to whether Christian looks like Christian McCaffrey. And a lot was made of, oh, he looks slow. He looks like he doesn't have a fourth gear or a fifth gear anymore. And Kyle kind of made a joke about that and said, like, yeah, Christian looks like Christian. He hit 25 miles per hour on the radar gun on the GPS tracker today. And Yahoo Sports ran with that and utilized it as he was being serious. And I didn't see the entire quote until later in the day, but I thought he was being serious. And I was like, there's no way. Like, Tyreek Hill was clocked at 23 plus miles per hour. There's no way Christian McCaffrey reached 25, but Kyle was more so poking fun at the idea that Christian doesn't look like Christian McCaffrey. And I think McCaffrey, while is not going to kind of break down the door and beat Father Time and look like himself of 2 years ago, I think we could be in for a place where McCaffrey, again, has 50 plus catches and has 130, 140 carries maybe in the year and reaches closer to 200 touches total. I think that's in the realm of possibility for CMC this year. But he's got to stay healthy. And I think that's why you're saying them utilize him more as a wide receiver. Papa J says here, what's up, Sterling? What's up, Papa J? He also says, like and subscribe. Yeah, do that, please. It certainly helps us out here on the show. But Strawberry says here, is Grant going to eat his words, that being Grant Cohn. He was so adamant about Christian losing a step. Look, I have been pretty open about disagreeing with that thought, but all it takes is one hit. And so I think, against Air, without playing in preseason, Christian looks like Christian, which is great to see. And I think that there's a place where McCaffrey will make a lot of people eat their words, including Grant, which, maybe Grant's right when it's all said and done. But right now, at least, Christian McCaffrey looks more like 2022 Christian McCaffrey than 2024 Christian McCaffrey, which is a really good thing. In fact, he looks more like 2022 Christian McCaffrey than 2020 Christian McCaffrey and 2021 Christian McCaffrey. So he looks healthy. That's the important part. If he's healthy, he'll be good. There's no question about that. A healthy Christian McCaffrey will always be a good Christian McCaffrey. So that's the big important part here, is he's healthy and hasn't taken too many hits. Getting more into my notes here, I do want to highlight Russell Gage. He was, and I don't say this lightly, he was abusing the Raiders wide receivers in 1v1s. He's a bigger body guy, so I get that. But I think that for as much as we've talked about him during training camp and the joint practice, takeaways and recaps, Russell Gage may be in for a bigger preseason week 2 than week 1. He, again, like, I'm not going to go out there and say that Russell Gage was beating like insane, awesome cornerbacks. He wasn't beating Patrick Surtain or somebody like that. But like, the Raiders don't have those guys on their defense. But for your assumed 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th wide receiver in your room to be having that good of a day against the Raiders secondary, like, just a great day for him. And I think he, again, is pushing for a roster spot, if not already getting one at this point in time. Again, the injuries will determine as to what happens. Like, if Jordan Watkins finds himself on IR to begin the year, then Gage is guaranteed a job. And really, if Ayuk's out too and Robinson's out, like, Gage is kind of locked in. Like, he's here. And I think having a great day today was kind of a nice cherry on top of an already really good training camp and joint practices sessions. Moving along to the defense, I already talked about Spencer Burford, but I'll just say it again. Wasn't good, but let's move on to the defense, because Fred Warner. Haven't really talked about Fred too much because he's all pro Fred. He's always all pro Fred. Even last year, playing on a broken ankle, was still really good linebacker, or at least playing above average down to his own par, but still fine enough to be out there every single day. Fred Warner was terrorizing this Raiders offense. Now, he has obviously stepped aside to give other players more run during training camp this year, which makes sense. But Fred, again, the Raiders offense really is not bad. Geno Smith, Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers, Trey Tucker, and other guys involved in there. Like, he was, I have called him the great eraser of the middle of the football field. And that was on display today against Las Vegas, especially during 7-on-7s. He was essentially making it impossible for Geno Smith to pass the football near him today. He had an amazing PBU, or excuse me, he had amazing coverage that was nearly a PBU, but wasn't one. He was on Trey Tucker, the wide receiver, and he essentially forced Geno Smith into a throwaway, but still targeting the player. He was more of like, oh crap, he isn't open. Okay, I'll throw it over there and kind of get the rep over with. But that's on Fred almost wasting one of the Raiders offensive snaps today during practice. So Fred being who Fred always is. Unfortunately, though, the same thing cannot be said for Deommodore Lenoir. Now, to give Demo maybe some slack, he has a hip injury or hip irritation, as they're calling it, but was not his best day, which, look, you're always allowed to have an off day. You're always allowed to grow and make mistakes and hopefully learn from them. I'm not sure if he was trying new things or the hip was bothering him out there today. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know, but not a great day from Lenoir. He had a really nice PBU, though, on a deep shot from Geno Smith to Trey Tucker. Got his hands up, knocked it out of the air, which was awesome to see. But then he gave up 3 touchdowns today, which isn't like Lenoir. Now, in one of his cases, he was guarding Brock Bowers, which is a mismatch. He's a smaller cornerback, albeit feisty. You're not going to win many matchups against a tight end if you are Lenoir. Mainly one like Brock Bowers, who was, if not the best, one of the best tight ends last year in the entire league as a rookie. The other 2 times he got beat by Trey Tucker. So not an ideal day for Lenoir. Not a great day. Again, I don't know if he'll practice or play on Saturday against the Raiders at 1 o'clock in Las Vegas, but he may push to kind of get his look back, if you will. But I don't know, and I'm not going to make a declaration on his day outside of it being not a great one because I don't know where the hip's at. And if he's trying to work himself back into it and kind of work through things, then okay, whatever. But not a great day from him by any means. Then there's Chase Lucas, a guy that with Upton Stout being on the sideline and Trey Brown not taking any team drill snaps today, Chase Lucas, like the preseason game against the Broncos, got every single rep for the defense. Didn't take a single snap off today in practice. He was awesome. He continues to be a surprise, continues to be a player that, isn't going to lock somebody down in coverage, isn't going to be a starter on this team by any means, but it's certainly a big surprise and definitely making a push to push guys off the roster ahead of him. Trey Brown being in that grouping, of course. But Chase Lucas today got an interception, a lot of drop passes from the Raiders today. In this case, it helped Chase Lucas. Drop pass led to his INT, but nonetheless, a good day from Chase Lucas again, who continues to get first, second, and third team reps. So I'm expecting the same thing from him against the Raiders as we saw against the Broncos, which the Broncos are a much better team than Las Vegas. I think their offenses are similar, albeit the Broncos have better players. I think Geno and Bo Nix are pretty comparable, albeit Bo Nix is better. But I think for how good Chase Lucas played against the Broncos, you should expect something similar to his performance against the Raiders this Saturday. The 49ers 2025 says, "What's up, Sterling? What's up, 49ers 2025? Hope you're having a great Thursday." And Big Brick 84 says, "I hope Chase Lucas keeps showing up and out. I really want him to make the 53-man roster. I think he will. I think he's making the roster over Darrell Luter Jr. There is like one hiccup that may change things. Siren Neal can play safety and cornerback. I think he may be in there, but Sala likes playmakers, so I think Chase Lucas certainly has the inside track. But just don't sleep on Siren Neal, special teams guy, veteran player signed during free agency, a guy they brought in this year alone to be on the special teams unit. So we shall see as the times in practices progress. But I think that he also may be in the running for that job too. Then the last thing to get into today is Jacob Robinson. And this is kind of where I'm a little bit torn and with myself of like, you prefer to have Jacob Robinson be a practice squad guy or red shirt for a season, get his body right, have a year in the defense, then make the roster next year and be a part of it when inevitably you're going to lose Trey Brown and Dallas Flowers if those guys depart in free agency next year for a new team. Whereas Jacob Robinson is a UDFA. He was signed as a priority free agent by the team, and he's looked pretty good throughout his time with San Francisco so far. And even today, once again, like he has time and time again out there at practice, got a PBU with Aiden O'Connell playing quarterback for the Raiders, which I'm shocked he's still there. But, I'm really impressed with Jacob Robinson, which doesn't surprise me, but I do think that it's more of from my own perspective, like, how can I find him a place on the roster? Because I don't want to let him go and get claimed by somebody else. I think he's too valuable, but I do think he needs a year. So it's like I want to keep Jacob Robinson, but I just can't find a spot for him on the roster. But maybe that's somebody they pick over Darrell Luter Jr. or maybe Trey Brown, or like maybe they value his projection over what somebody can currently give them. They're in a weird spot. Like the Niners are in a place where they want to win now, but they really can't afford to let talent walk out of the room without one, getting something back for them, or two, giving it away for free. So I think Jacob Robinson is amongst that kind of fifth, sixth, seventh cornerback making a push for the roster as well. And been very impressed by him in his first training camp. He needs a year, but like Siren Neal, he also can play safety too. So there is some versatility with him that I think the Niners will like. But Lori Matthews asks a good question here. And she asks here, I think this is based off of what Kyle Shanahan said on SiriusXM yesterday, 2 days ago, but she asks, do you make anything about Kyle saying about having a lot of new players as far as them making the playoffs? I think Kyle's being honest. I think he's being pretty upfront of like, look, I think that when you have so many young guys in the building now on offense and defense, and you are like, each year teams have a draft class, right? But the Niners are kind of a competitive team, or a team expecting to compete, but also have a draft class and a roster operating like a rebuilding team. Oops. I hit the mic and the camera. But like that, to me, like they're kind of caught in between. And so I think Kyle's saying that, like, look, we have a lot of young guys on the roster that they are going to be the key to our success. Now, we have to have our veteran guys carry us to begin the season, and hopefully they can lead us to wins early on once these young guys get ready, have their feet wet, and can grow in their first season with the team. So I think that Kyle has accurate expectations for the season, that he believes this team can be a playoff team. But he's also honest about, a lot of new guys on the roster. Things can certainly go up or down depending on how those guys play. But I don't think Kyle is speaking negatively. I don't think Kyle was speaking incorrectly. I think it's nice to have a head coach that is honest with the team and honest with the media of like, look, which Kyle usually isn't. Kyle's a big liar. Kyle loves to lie. So to see him be upfront and honest, like, look, we have 11 new guys on the roster that 7 of those guys are going to have to be, and play pivotal snaps for us. And we're hoping for better things and to be healthy. Like, I think Kyle comes from you're from the POV of like, if Christian McCaffrey's healthy, if Brock Purdy's healthy, if George Kittle's healthy, if Ricky Pearsall's healthy, if Fred Warner's healthy, Nick Bosa's healthy, and Lenoir's healthy, we should be able to win a lot of games this year. But the difference maker in that, the difference maker of being a fringe playoff team or a wild card team to a division winning team or a division winning team to a NFC title game team is going to be based on how quickly these young guys can play and progress. So that's where I kind of saw it, which really isn't anything different than what I've been saying for a while. I just think Kyle was like, look, we gutted the roster. We brought in new dudes. We're banking on guys that have been hurt to be healthy. It's going to be a wild ride this year. I think there's going to be some tough wins and tough losses. I think that, there's going to be games they're supposed to win that they're going to lose. There's going to be games that they're going to lose or games they're going to win. They're supposed to it's all going to be this big, like, we don't know. However, again, they have the expectations of contending, but a roster that like really is reliant on kind of the rebuilding strategy to help push them into the future. But that is equally as terrifying, as exciting. And I think Kyle was kind of pushing towards that, which I think is honest. Like the Niners are in one of the more precarious situations compared to other teams in the league. Like, they aren't the Lions, they aren't the Packers, they aren't the Eagles, they aren't the Broncos, they aren't the Chiefs. Like, they're the 49ers, a team that, unlike those teams I already said, are like guaranteed to compete barring serious injury. But they're a team that their season will depend on the strength and the health of their superstars and the progress and trajectory of play of their young players. One final question here. Leon Sandcastle asks, do you think they would entertain trading Jair Brown to Wilkes with the New York Jets? I do. You can certainly have the conversation then about, maybe that opens a door for Chase Lucas, Darrell Luter Jr., Siren Neal, like that fifth safety. But that depends on how they view Mustafa's health and returning, Marquis Siegel, which they seem to view him as a first-team player already on defense. But Richie Grant not practicing the last week and a half, Jason Pinnock currently on the sideline, like that to me could determine it. Like, if those guys are injured, Jair Brown's probably going to make the team. But I think I haven't checked the Jets' offensive line or their roster just yet. But for a 4th-round pick, for a 5th-round pick, why not? That could be a win-win for them. The Jets rebuilding kind of, and the Niners need more draft picks, need to get younger. And, a 5th-round offensive lineman doesn't sound that bad next year. I think, especially with Burford and Pleasance, like, this team has neglected the offensive line for too long, despite how great Connor Colby and Drew Moss have been in their first training camp ever. In the NFL, like, they really, really have to address the offensive line. And so whether that is getting a depth piece via trade or getting a draft pick to maybe get one of those later, that to me would not be a bad deal. But I don't know if they would do that if Grant or Richie or if Pinnock and Grant are on the sideline. But it certainly will be something to watch. Brown practiced today, I hope, and I think he'll play against the Raiders. So not to say he's playing for his job, but he certainly has 2 more days to kind of prove himself to this defense with new coordinator and Saleh and new special teams coach and Brant Boyer. Like, there's no promise he makes the roster. But again, safety is a big fluctuation point. The receiver room is a big fluctuation point. The running backs behind McCaffrey because of the health is a big fluctuation point. And Kyle was open about it of like, this is the most open spots on the 53-man roster we have had since like 2018. And he's 100% right. So I think if you can get anything for Jair Brown, I think you'd be at least you entertain the idea, but I don't know if they can pull the trigger on that. And roster cut down day is, I think, August 27th, Lori Matthews. So they will not cut the roster down, I believe, until August 27th. So it'll be a little bit, but that's 13 days away. So 2 weeks for Jair Brown and other guys to prove themselves, and 2 preseason games to prove themselves to this coaching staff. So it's fun to watch, but we have preseason action on Saturday. I can now finally announce to you my somewhat big news if you don't already know this, but I will be back on 95.7 The Game this year hosting post-game after every single 49er game, back on Overtime with my friend and co-host Mark Grandy. So if you are a Niner fan and you're tuned into this show, after every Niner game, go to 95.7 The Game on the radio or on YouTube. I will be live reacting to it right after it ends, and also right back here after my radio show to react to the game. So big news for myself, back on the radio once again for this Niner season, my 4th year covering the team on the radio. Happy to be back and happy to hopefully have your ears and eyes as the season continues. But that's all I have for you today. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Leave us that 5-star audio podcast review. You can also follow us on social media at 49ers_access is the X or Twitter. 49ers.access is the Instagram. And use that promo code right here on screen, 49ers_access, and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. I have a brand new show coming your way tomorrow. May also be something new we're trying here with some friends of mine. Hopefully you guys like it. It'll be a 3-way stream, I believe, with some friends, but hopefully, fingers crossed, that happens. But if it doesn't, I will 1,000% see you guys on Saturday on 95.7 The Game and right here for a post-game show following my radio show on 49ers Access. But hope you have a great rest of your Thursday evening. I will talk to you guys maybe tomorrow, but definitely on Saturday. And as always, my name is Sterling Bennett. And until next time, stay faithful.